Okay, guys, I just want to talk to you guys briefly about Fantasy 2 and just how long of a journey it has been to get to this place where I finally feel confident just culminating this album and letting it loose. I think a lot of you guys think that my mermaidism is a form of cosplay, when it's really actually a very, very deep spiritual thing that means a lot to me.
Oftentimes, a new artist has a meteoric rise to fame, and they release their debut album amidst this momentum. Or they release their debut album, and due to its success, it seems apparent that a successful career will follow. Then, for some reason or other, the artist never releases a sophomore album, despite several promises and announcements. Sometimes the artist continues to release singles, collabs, and features, while others it seems like the artist fades away completely. In this video, I'm not going to talk about artists who have died or are no longer actively making music, since receiving another album from them is either highly unlikely or impossible. So people like Lauryn Hill or Jeff Buckley won't be mentioned. In addition, I'm not going to be talking about artists whose careers are relatively fresh, so it makes sense for them to have not put out a second album yet. I want to focus on artists who are still active, yet haven't released a sophomore album despite seemingly being capable of doing so. And by album, I mean a studio album, so I won't be counting mixtapes or mini albums or remix albums or reissues of previous albums. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into it. At just 19, Cassie came onto the R&B scene with her hit Me and You. Me and You is a classic, and I still listen to this song almost daily. It still sounds so fresh, it's hard to believe that the song came out in 2006. Me and You is the lead single from Cassie's self-titled debut album, peaking at number 3 on the Hot 100, and has since been certified platinum. Me and You's minimalistic R&B production was considered ahead of its time, which is probably why the song still holds up today. That's actually a praise the Cassie album in its entirety has received. The album also came out in 2006 and was released through Atlantic Records, as well as Diddy's label Bad Boy. Diddy signed Cassie after hearing Me and You, which had become popular on MySpace. He actually already had somewhat of a connection to Cassie, as it was his makeup artist who introduced Cassie to Ryan Leslie, who wrote and produced Me and You. Leslie also produced the rest of Cassie's album. The next single, Long Way to Go, didn't do as well in the States as it did internationally. Regardless, it's still a bop. If you haven't heard it, you probably have heard the mashup with LE SSERAFIM's Fearless that was trending on TikTok a couple months ago. Overall, Cassie's album was met with positive reviews. A review from the Washington Post said, "One of the best pop albums released this year sounds like it came from outer space, or the future, or maybe just heaven." Cassie's quiet yet sweet vocals are praised, and Leslie was praised for the production on the album. Billboard said the album offers sexy laid-back tunes, dainty ballads, and mid-tempo dance jams, and its whispery piano runs and simple bass lines create a fresh listening experience. The production, as well as Cassie's vocals, earned her appreciation as an experimental R&B artist in the vein of other artists like Janet Jackson, Aaliyah, and Khalees. Cassie's album debuted at number 4 on the Hot 200 and remained in the top 20 for 2 weeks following its release. Despite the positive reception for her album, Cassie faced a lot of criticism for her live performances. Though her vocals were sweet, sultry, and laid back on the album, her live vocals on her performances on TRL and 106 in Park came off as shaky and out of tune.
You've been waiting so long, I'm here to answer your call.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I know that I shouldn't have had you waiting at all.
Cassie attributed her lackluster performances to stage fright, saying, "I don't think I should have done those shows, but I didn't know I had a choice. I would sit in rehearsals and sing full songs a cappella. I wasn't Beyonce, but I wasn't fucking up. Then I got out there and was like, oh my god, millions of people are watching me right now. I have stage fright." Diddy stood behind her, saying Bad Boy would continue developing her as an artist, and he had faith in her singing abilities. Cassie's sophomore album was slated for release in September 2007 under the working title Connecticut Fever. Apparently, it would have the same minimal hypnotic production as her debut album. However, she'd parted ways with Ryan Leslie and would now be working with Kanye West and Pharrell as her producers. One of Cassie's singles, Turn the Lights Off, was leaked and then scrubbed from the internet. You can now find unfinished versions of the song on YouTube. In my personal opinion, it definitely sounds like a song of its time, but it's nowhere near as experimental or creative as the songs produced by Ryan Leslie. The anticipated album produced 2 singles, Is It You and Official Girl featuring Lil Wayne. Is It You was also featured on Step Up to the Street soundtrack, in which Cassie had a role in the film. Cassie said Official Girl would be the lead single on her sophomore album. Though it was released for digital download in 2008, no album came. Cassie switched gears again, and in 2009 it was announced her sophomore album would now be titled Electro Love. 2 singles were released, Let's Get Crazy featuring Akon and Must Be Love featuring P. Diddy. Though the two didn't officially announce their relationship until 2012, it was speculated that Cassie and Diddy started dating as early as 2007. Both Let's Get Crazy and Must Be Love failed to chart. At the end of 2009, it was announced that Cassie had signed to Interscope, hoping to finally release her sophomore album. Her next big release was King of Hearts. I like the song a lot, but I remember a lot of people not liking it when it came out. I don't think it's a bad song, but I do think the way it was promoted as Cassie's big comeback single might have had expectations too high. Though the production was praised and the song composition was likened to that of Robyn or Kylie Minogue, reviews said the song seemed to lack heart or passion on Cassie's end. That year, Cassie also released The Boys with Nicki Minaj. Though the single was liked and enjoyable, it didn't create anything other than minor buzz for Cassie. In 2013, Cassie released her mixtape Rockabye Baby, inspired by Vanessa Williams' character in New Jack City. The mixtape was regarded as one of the best from 2013, and it's the closest we've gotten to date to a sophomore album from Cassie. The following year, she released another mixtape called Dope and Diamonds. Let's Get Crazy and Official Girl were both included on it. In 2015, her debut album was reissued on vinyl and was considered one of the best reissues of that year. Cassie did another label shift in 2017 when she signed a new deal with Epic Records and Bad Boy. She released a single with G-Eazy and teased collaborations with Party Next Door, Jeremiah, and Khalid for her upcoming album, which had been promised over 10 years ago at this point. Though those singles didn't come, and neither did the album, Cassie did release another single titled Don't Play It Safe. In 2018, Cassie parted ways with Diddy, who she dated for over a decade and got engaged to in 2014. The following year in 2019, Cassie married her now husband Alex Fine and welcomed her daughter Frankie. She released several singles in 2019 and 2020, as well as an EP titled Cassandra Deluxe Edition in 2021. Make no mistake though, it's not a full album and it only has 2 songs. As of 2021, Cassie left Bad Boy and became an independent artist. In an interview on Sierra's Level Up radio show, she said, "You could do whatever you want. You could wake up tomorrow and be like, okay, I want to record 4 records, and then put them out and it's mine, and what are you going to say?" Truly, I think this was Cassie's way of subtly implying she'd been held back at Bad Boy. She switched labels over the years, yes, but Bad Boy and Diddy were the common denominator. Though Cassie's never explicitly confirmed it, Diddy has been accused of ruining her career, and other people's careers, honestly. From the outside looking in, it seemed like he wanted Cassie to be his professional girlfriend rather than a recording artist. After all, it makes little to no sense to have one of the hottest rising stars at the time on your label, and she's your girlfriend, and somehow she still can't get a second album out. Still, it seems like Cassie's living her absolute best life with her husband and 2 kids. Her career as an artist isn't without impact. Cassie's influenced artists today like Jhené Aiko and Kalila. She has over 25 singles to her name, and is featured on songs with artists including Travis Scott and Solange. Back in May, Cassie returned to the stage for the first time in 6 years and expressed excitement about being able to have her career on her own terms, so hopefully that means more music and hopefully another album is to come. As far as music goes, Azealia Banks is probably most known for her song 212, which was released at the very end of 2011. The song went viral, putting the then 20-year-old on the map. Previously, Azealia had been promoting her music on MySpace. 212 was originally released as a free download, which helped make it a popular club song in Europe, and it reached the top 20 in the UK. In The Guardian's year-end review, 212 is considered the second best song of the year. 212 is considered one of the best songs of the 2010s, and Billboard named it one of the decade's most defining songs. The song's been used to promote several films, including The Bling Ring and Pitch Perfect. 212 was also included on Azealia's EP 1991. 1991 was released through Interscope in the US, as Banks had a falling out with her previous label XL Records. Though the EP didn't chart well, it was critically acclaimed. Time ranked 1991 as the 9th best album of 2012, and it was included in Billboard's 50 best albums of the year. 1991 gained a cult following amongst Azealia's internet fans as well. Like, even as I'm saying that, I can just remember the gift sets from Licorice on Tumblr. Does anyone else remember that? The popularity of 212 in 1991 created anticipation for Azealia's debut album. She followed up 1991 with her mixtape Fantasy, which also received positive reviews. In 2014, Azealia released her long-awaited album titled Broke with Expensive Taste, which she'd been working on since 2011. Conflicts with Interscope had allegedly delayed its release. Azealia dropped the album under her new label, Prospect Park, without any announcements or promotion. Though Broke with Expensive Taste was primarily hip-hop, house, dance pop, and trap influences were evident on the project as well. Metacritic gave Broke with Expensive Taste a rating of 77 out of 100, and Rolling Stone called it one of the year's boldest releases. It made the list of best albums of 2014 in publications including Pitchfork, Complex, and the New York Times. Azealia spent the majority of 2015 touring and promoting Broke with Expensive Taste and performed at Coachella that year. In 2016, she announced her next mixtape Slay Z and dropped the lead single The Big Big B. If you remember, this was a messy era for Azealia. Well, I mean, all her eras are messy, she's messy in general, but this one was especially messy. Azealia intended for collabs that never came to fruition, including one with Rihanna, and repurposed samples that were intended to go on her debut album but couldn't be included due to label conflicts. The final product was one that was considered incoherent, disharmonic, and said to suffer from poor musical choices. Though reviews said Azealia's talent was apparent, some of the choices made on Slay Z hurt the quality of the mixtape. In a review of Slay Z, a blogger for Vice called Azealia a seriously fluent, seriously flaky rapper, and a dance floor diva you love more than her beats or obviously her tweets. By this time, people were hip to Azealia's reckless online behavior, which had been going on for a few years at this point. One could easily and probably rightly assume that she displayed the same sort of behavior in her working relationships as well, which could explain the fallouts with her collaborators and several record labels. My favorite random piece of Azealia Banks lore is her accusation that Rihanna kept her sequestered away in a basement when she was invited over to write for her. And apparently they didn't give her any real food, and she just had to sustain herself off a jar of peanuts and some cans of beer. In February of 2018, Azealia announced Fantasy 2. Terminology went back and forth as to whether this would be Azealia's next album or her next mixtape. Off topic, but I had to look up the difference between an album or a mixtape if anyone's confused and wants to know also. Mixtapes are less polished and are usually released for free and meant to create buzz around upcoming projects, typically studio albums. Less, if any, money is invested into mixtapes since a profit isn't expected. An album is more polished and perfected, and the intention is to profit off of both the album and the singles. Often, artists release mixtapes with less involvement from their labels, if any. Just a few weeks before Azealia announced Fantasy 2, she signed to Entertainment One Music, also known as E1 Music. Yet, just a few months later in July, Azealia announced the project was cancelled. A month later in August, she said Fantasy would still be happening. This was in a series of Instagram stories where she blasted E1 Music and promised Fantasy 2 would come even if she went broke funding the project.
Okay guys, the way Fantasy 2 is setting itself up, the production lineup, no. Okay, look, Azealia Banks is about to prove once again that she is the best A&R in the music industry. This album is about to be so fucking just sonically stellar. Oh my god.
Despite several fan-made playlists, it seems no official Fantasy 2 mixtape was ever released. Azealia announced on Instagram that she'd never release a full-bodied music again because her fans were undeserving. In fickle Azealia fashion, she then changed her mind and announced another project named C-Punk. Azealia also announced 2 other projects, Business and Pleasure and Young Rapunzel 2. Business and Pleasure was supposed to be Azealia's sophomore album and was said to come in 2015. Yet it was delayed several times, most recently in October of 2019. Over the years, she's released several different track lists and singles for it, including Chi Chi, Black Madonna, Pyrex Princess, and Nirvana. However, there's been no further announcements about the release of Business and Pleasure. Azealia's most recent update is that Fantasy 2/C-Punk would come in the summer of 2021, but it still hasn't yet. This past summer, Azealia told fans via Instagram that if they helped her raise over $100,000 on Venmo, she'd re-release Fantasy 1 and finally drop Fantasy 2. Obviously, she didn't raise the money. Azealia did give us Tarantula EP last year, which contained the title track and Wings of a Butterfly. That year, we also got FM All Night and Hypnotic and its several remixes. Azealia also contributed to Surprise Me, which was a collaboration with Mallrat. Her most recent single, New Bottega, came out just a few weeks ago, but it's not available on streaming platforms. It is available on YouTube though, and it gives old Azealia. I like it. I don't know when or if we can expect another body of work from Azealia. From her social media, it seems like she spends most of her time critiquing other people and their music rather than focusing on her own. Azealia's probably also ruined most of the working relationships that were once available to her with her erratic and aggressive online behavior. Which is a shame because at the start of her career, she had a lot of support and people predicted her to have a long and successful career. But like I've said before, Azealia really is her own worst enemy. She still obviously has a cult following because as volatile as she is a talented artist. You know that Glee meme of Kurt where he's talking about Rachel and he's like something like, oh boy, is she difficult, but she sure can sing. That's what I think of with Azealia. She's difficult, but she can rap. In 2017, SZA crashed into the mainstream with her debut album, Ctrl. SZA was by no means unheard of prior as she'd released several EPs and was a staple at music festivals. She had a strong fan base online and had already collaborated with popular contemporaries at the time like Chance the Rapper. She was most popular though in the R&B and neo-soul scenes. After releasing her second EP, SZA signed to Top Dawg Entertainment in 2013. Kendrick Lamar was formerly signed to Top Dawg and is currently home to artists including Isaiah Rashad and Doechii. In April of 2017, SZA signed to RCA Records, Womp Womp, which was her first major label contract. Ctrl was a massive success, debuting at number 3 on the Hot 200 and earning SZA 4 Grammy nominations, including Best New Artist. The album has also since been certified double platinum. Ctrl was universally acclaimed and it made it on Rolling Stone's 500 Best Albums of All Time list. After the success of Ctrl, SZA continued releasing singles and collaborated with other artists like Kendrick Lamar, Cardi B, and Maroon 5. In May of 2019, she confirmed her song Brace Yourself would be the lead single from her sophomore album. Brace Yourself was never officially released, but it is available to listen to on YouTube. Later that year, SZA said in an interview with Rolling Stone that she continued to release music, but it might not necessarily be on an album. When asked again about her sophomore album in 2020, SZA responded in a now-deleted tweet, "At this point, y'all gotta ask Punch." She was referring to Terrence Punch Henderson, the president at Top Dawg. Apparently, anytime SZA tried to initiate a conversation about releasing her sophomore album, she was just told soon. Of course, her sophomore album hasn't come yet, but SZA still released several successful singles like I Hate You, which went viral on TikTok. She's also done other collabs including Hit Different with Ty Dolla $ign, Kiss Me More with Doja Cat, and No Love with Summer Walker. For Kiss Me More, SZA won her first Grammy along with Doja Cat for Best Pop Duo Performance. After the 2022 Grammys, which were back in April, SZA announced she'd finished her sophomore album and it would be released soon. At the Met Gala, she said the album was complete and due for a summer release. The closest we got to an album release from SZA was the release of the deluxe edition of Ctrl to commemorate its 5-year anniversary. SZA accused her labels of preventing her from releasing her music and giving her fans a SZA summer, as she put it. In an Instagram comment written in July, she said, "It's 100% Punch and RCA on this one. I want it this summer. They wanted more time. At this point, I'm just trying to have a good time stress-free, LOL." In August, Punch Henderson stated in an interview that SZA's sophomore album would come soon and he and SZA were on the same page as to when it would be coming out. Punch said, "It's not really a secret. SZA's coming very, very soon. We pretty much have the album done. We know exactly when it's coming out. But on the internet, you only get a certain amount of characters. You don't have time to really go into a full explanation of what's going on like that when you're in the moment and tweeting something. We don't need an explanation. If the album's almost ready, whenever you confirm a release date, just tweet it out. That could be done in 5 characters or less." In an October interview with Complex, SZA since said that she's in no rush to release her album. She said, "I don't even know what this album is about and what it sounds like, which is why I had to go to the mode of what feels good to my brain and to my energy, and the songs that I think are hot, I just have to go with them. It's a little bit of everything. It's a little aggressive. Some parts are incredibly soft, some of them are ballads, I don't know, it's all over the place. It's just where my heart is." She also said, "I don't have any deadlines because at the end of the day, when my shit comes out, it comes out. And if I ever lose my ability to choose, I have no problem vacating my current life and doing something different. I'm not glued to being an artist for the rest of my life or anything for that matter. I'm seeing where it takes me." Whether this is true, I don't know, because it seems SZA's alluded several times to her labels being the reason her album's not out yet. SZA told TMZ a couple days ago that she's sitting on over 100 unreleased songs and the album could be dropping any day now. So that sounds like she has the songs themselves complete, it's just a matter of choosing which ones will go on the album. I wonder if she has a title and cover for her album yet too. It seems like it's not quite clear whose fault it is that the album isn't out yet. Because it sounds like the album isn't complete despite what SZA said before, but if it's not up to SZA to choose all the songs on the album, then I guess it's not entirely on her. Punch Henderson's most recent statement seems to have put the ball in SZA's court, saying she's welcome to drop the record whenever she's ready. A couple months ago, he made it sound like it wasn't that simple, and that makes it sound like if SZA does drop the album, it won't get proper promotion or support from the label. And I don't know that much about Dawg, but I do know that other artists signed to RCA have had similar struggles with releasing their music. Check out my RCA Curse video if you want to hear more about that. SZA fans have encouraged her to leave Dawg after her contract ends. If she did, it wouldn't be a surprise, especially since there's speculation that Kendrick also left the label due to poor management. Just a couple days ago, SZA announced a new song called Seasonal Depression. It's intended for a sophomore album, so hopefully this means that the album is coming soon, but who knows at this point. It will be cool to get a SZA album for the fall or the winter, but the way things are going with her labels, I don't think we should hold our breath. After making waves on social media, Cardi B eventually made it onto Love and Hip Hop New York. On the show, she chronicled her journey from a stripper and social media personality to becoming a legitimate recording artist. I'm sure I'm not the only one who thought she'd just be another one of the cast members on Love and Hip Hop whose music career never took off, and they just talked about it on the show for the next 10 seasons because that's where they're really making their money. Cardi proved us wrong, and she released 2 mixtapes in 2016 and 2017, but it was her song Bodak Yellow that put her on the map as an artist. The song was released to Atlantic Records and was Cardi's major label debut. Bodak Yellow was a viral hit, and if you were in college at that time like me, you know that song was inescapable at a party. That and Caroline. The Washington Post and Pitchfork both named Bodak Yellow the best song of 2017. It topped the Billboard chart for 3 weeks, making Cardi the first woman to achieve this since Lauryn Hill back in 1998. Cardi also became the first female to have a solo song certified diamond by the RIAA. Bodak Yellow was also nominated for 2 Grammys, Best Rap Song and Best Rap Performance. Bodak Yellow was the lead single from Cardi's debut album, Invasion of Privacy. The album debuted at number 1 and has since been certified triple platinum. Invasion of Privacy was promoted with the singles I Like It, Bartier Cardi, Be Careful, Ring, and of course Bodak Yellow. It also contained several collaborations with popular artists from SZA to Bad Bunny and J Balvin to Kehlani. Cardi broke several records with Invasion of Privacy, and it was the top female rap album of the 2010s. Invasion of Privacy won the Grammy for Best Rap Album, making Cardi the first female solo artist to win in that category. The album was met with critical acclaim, earning an 8.7 out of 10 from Pitchfork, 4 out of 5 stars from Rolling Stone, and an A rating from Vice. As of March 2022, every song on Invasion of Privacy is certified platinum or higher, making Cardi the first female artist to achieve this. Of course, with Invasion of Privacy's massive success, fans and critics alike anticipated a sophomore album to follow soon. In 2019, Cardi released 3 more platinum singles, Press, Money, and Please Me, featuring Bruno Mars. WAP came in 2020 and debuted at number 1, and actually the biggest opening week for a song in US history. WAP went 7 times platinum, and it went viral across social media. It might seem like a surprise that WAP wasn't nominated for a Grammy. Cardi explained she didn't submit the song because she didn't want any of her music considered until her sophomore album was complete. Cardi said, "If I was pressed for a Grammy, I would have submitted WAP for this year, but I didn't. I didn't want to be submitted to award shows until I put my album out because I think my album is so good. It means something and I worked on it a lot. I've been working on it for almost 2 years." In 2020, Cardi released her single Up, which debuted on the Hot 100 at number 2, but eventually went number 1. Up was nominated for Best Rap Performance at the 2022 Grammys, which is interesting because Cardi didn't submit WAP because her album wasn't out, but it still hadn't come out by the time Up was nominated. In 2021, Cardi also featured on Normani's Wild Side and Lizzo's Rumors, which were both certified gold. At the end of 2021, Cardi announced on Instagram that her sophomore album was on her to-do list for 2022. To this date, the album doesn't have a title or a release date. At first, a summer 2022 release was teased, but was delayed, one of the reasons being cited as technical difficulties. There was some controversy this summer when it was announced that Cardi would include WAP on the upcoming album. There was some controversy this summer when it was announced that Cardi would include WAP and Up on the upcoming album. She was accused of only adding the tracks in order to get the album or certifications whenever it dropped by including the #1 hits. Cardi responded by saying, "Why haven't you said nothing about other artists who recently put songs before the pandemic on their album, or people that have to put other people's songs on their shit? Imagine my biggest song not being on an album." I have nothing to say about whether Cardi's doing this for nefarious reasons, but I personally don't like it when artists include old songs on their album. We've already heard the song several times, and artists really will drop a 10-song album on it, and like half the songs are songs that we've heard because they've been out for over a year. I don't know what the specific window is or should be, but there's a point to me where a single is too old to put on an album. I feel like if Cardi's album had come out last year, it would have made sense to include WAP and Up, but at this point it seems like the album won't be out until 2023 at the earliest, and I don't see the point of including songs released in 2022 and 2021 on it. Despite having not released an album, Cardi's released singles in 2022, including Hot Shit. Most recently, she's collabed with Glorilla on Tomorrow 2. It debuted at #3 on the Hot R&B and Hip Hop charts and at #9 on the Hot 100. While there's no concrete information about Cardi's sophomore album to date, it's at least clear that she's still putting out music. Despite having only one album out, Cardi's been consistent with releasing singles and features over the past few years. It feels like she's always releasing music, so I genuinely forgot she didn't have a sophomore album out until I saw people talking about it on social media. But when the album does come, it'll be interesting to see if it does the same numbers and breaks records like Invasion of Privacy did. It's clear that there are several reasons at play as to why artists might take a while to release a second album, if they ever do. Sometimes there's no clear reason why these artists only have one album, and we can only speculate based on the information that's available to us. But sometimes it's label conflicts and creative differences, other times the artist themselves is the conflict. In other cases, artists are either too busy to put together an entire album or haven't yet found inspiration or motivation for their second project. I would also assume that there's a lot of pressure to release a sophomore album if the debut is a massive success. And hey, if an artist never releases a sophomore album, then they can't suffer from the sophomore curse. I also think a lot of pop artists and rappers are becoming singles artists rather than album artists. I feel like it's in part because people's interests move so quickly that it's more profitable for artists to continuously put out music so that they stay talked about. I don't think this applies to the artists I talked about in the video, but a lot of these artists going viral on social media need to keep putting out singles simply to remind us that they still exist. Internet fame is fleeting, and without a concrete fan base, you have to stay in people's faces. In addition, half of these artists, we don't even know the full songs that made them famous, just whatever little snippet that went viral on TikTok, so it makes us even less interested in hearing a full album from them. While I like continuously having new music from my faves, there's just something that hits different about getting a whole album. It's an entire body of work that encapsulates a certain era in an artist's life, and I feel like often the music is more meaningful when a body of work is made around a certain time or an experience. To me, singles are just little moments and snippets, but an album creates an entire atmosphere. Album sales in general have been on the decline. In 2018, 169 million albums were sold in the United States versus nearly 940 million being sold in 1999. According to Nielsen SoundScan, the highest selling album of 2021 was Adele's 30, which sold over 1.4 million copies. In 2020, Folklore was the highest selling album, selling 1.2 million copies. The noticeable decline in physical sales comes around 2015-2016, which is probably when most people made the shift to streaming, being the way that they primarily listened to music. In 2015, Adele's 25 was the highest selling album, selling over 7 million copies. She again was the highest selling artist in 2016, selling 1.7 million copies of 25. The noticeable decline is probably because the album was a year old at that point, but still, no other artist took that spot from her. Back in the 2000s, the highest selling album with the least amount of copies sold was Lil Wayne's The Carter III, released in 2008. It still sold 2.8 million copies though. NSYNC's No Strings Attached sold 9.9 million copies in 2000, and no album in the 2010s or 2020s has even come close to that. If people aren't buying physical albums as much as they used to, it's usually less profitable for the artists and the labels to spend the time and money necessary to make and promote them. Artists profit much less from streaming than they do from physical sales. For example, to make the amount of money that No Strings Attached made from selling nearly 1 billion physical copies, the album would have had to have been streamed 8.5 billion times. Because of the massive amount of physical copies sold, the Beatles are still Universal's 4th highest earning musical act, despite their streams being a lot lower than contemporary artists signed to Universal. A lot of people do still purchase physical albums, but typically only if they're a huge fan of a certain artist. For casual fans of an artist, it's easier and cheaper to just stream the songs that they do want to hear instead of being stuck with a physical album that they paid for and are probably skipping a large part of. Newer artists seem to be steering away from the traditional album cycle, which typically entails putting out a studio album, then touring, and releasing the next album and so on. For some artists, that meant releasing a new album and going on tour once every year or every other year. This can be exhausting and stifling for artists because they're either constantly touring, not putting out music that they're proud of just so that they can meet deadlines, or they have to wait until an album is coming to release music that they are proud of. Ariana Grande has said that she prefers to release singles when they're fresh rather than wait on them. In a 2018 tweet, she said, "I don't really like eras. I just want to make music and drop it whenever and perform it. I don't want to conform to like the routine or the formula anymore. If I love music, I ain't waiting another 2 years to drop it. I want to share it with you when it's fresh." Flume is also of a similar opinion, having said he doesn't want to do an album, wait a few years and tour, and then do another album, then repeat. Instead wants to be able to make something in the day and then play it at night. I think it'll be interesting to see with the rise of streaming and social media whether that eventually leads to a decline in the number of albums artists release over the course of their career. It already seems like it. And I think in the future we're gonna see more artists with only one album to their name, long gaps between albums, or no albums at all. I feel like this could be positive if the artists are truly creating music at a sustainable pace for them. Because as with the artists I've talked about, they face constant pressure from fans to put out new albums or music. Putting out singles continuously obviously satiates fans, but breaking away from the album cycle also means potentially the artists get to make music when they need to, and that could lead to longer gaps, which usually doesn't sit as well with fans. Not sure why, but I couldn't find any popular male artists that this one album thing applied to, at least amongst those who are still making music regularly today. So if you can think of one, please let me know in the comments, because it wasn't my intention for all the people I talked about in depth in the video to all be women. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you think any of these albums are coming soon, or what you think about the whole album versus singles artist debate. I feel like sometimes I flip-flop on what I think, but I'd be interested to hear y'all's thoughts. Oh, side note, do you guys ever think we're gonna get a second Sky Ferreira album? She said Masochism was coming out this year, but in the time that she's announced that album, I have finished high school, I have finished college, and I've basically settled into adult life, all within the time she's been telling us this album's coming. So who knows? But if it does come, I'm gonna stream because nighttime, my time is still my shit. But anyways, if you guys like this video, be sure to comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very soon. Love you so much. Bye-bye.